more specifically about the self-scout, some of the big key topics that Dabo mentioned in his interview was obviously the turnovers. Everybody who watched Clemson football last season knows that the turnovers were a huge deal. They worked to the detriment of Clemson so many times last season, starting off with that Duke game. We will not repeat what happened. It was a massacre. It was a comedy of errors, if you will. It was everything, every way. Like it was a textbook of let's show you how to lose a game that you're not supposed to lose. And we did it in amazing fashion to start the year last year. And then he talked a little bit about some of the things that the offense did well, right? He talked about how the offense was like 15th in the country in first downs, right? They were really efficient at getting first downs. But then again, the turnovers reared their ugly head, which caused them to be really poor in scoring offense. There was a lack of explosive plays on the offensive side of the ball last year. I mean, they were just pretty much non-existent in that sense. And then talked a little bit about the defense and their red zone woes and how they didn't have a terribly well percentage as far as red zone defense. Scoring defense wasn't great. Some of that was attributed to the turnovers and things like that. But one of the big things that I think is probably what I'm looking forward to see if Clemson can clean up during the spring and then heading into summer and fall camp is the explosive plays that we gave up on defense. That was one of the big things that was a constant last season was you just knew at some point in time that defense was going to give up an explosive play. It happened far too often. And that's definitely something they got to clean up. Obviously, the field goal kicking game, we all know the woes that Clemson went through last season with that. And then the punt return had some muff punts, had some serious issues with that. But he just gave kind of the blueprint, of what the coaching staff has been doing. So what were your thoughts on Dabo Swinney kind of laying that out in detail and letting everybody know, like, hey, we know the things that went wrong last year. And we're not burying our heads in the sand. We're making plans and we're making progress to get these things corrected and to figure out a way, one, why things went wrong, and then what do we do to correct those things that did go wrong a season ago? So what were your thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really jumped out to me was just kind of how agitated Dabo came into that press conference, not in a negative way, but it was clear, like just from his tone of voice when speaking about all of that, you could tell how much last season weighed on him and all of the issues that last year's team had. And so that was one of the things that really like just, jumped out. And it was a little bit different than, years past. He kind of came into it a little more just you could feel the frustration emanating a little bit more from all the things, just him thinking about it. You could tell it was weighing on him. And so I thought he laid it out pretty succinctly about how much they struggled with, all of the aspects that you just mentioned. And, he did hit the positives like the first down thing, but he also followed it up and said, well, but we still don't have that explosive. I think the words he used was explosive chemistry, so to speak. And so, and he indirectly referenced the wide receivers and the injury issues that happened there. And so I think he did a lot to love up on Cade, but also say he's got to do things better. He's like, yeah, the turnovers were bad. He's got to get bigger and stronger. But the sacks and some of the interceptions, a lot of the interceptions weren't on him. I watched a lot of Clemson and I rewatched a lot of Clemson of Cade Klubnik's snaps last year. But I'm not going to call into question that statement because obviously Dabo knows the playbook way more than I do, and obviously what I'm seeing. I don't know what they're coaching Cade to do and all that, but regardless, I think he came into it with an idea of I really need to bring out, the best out of these guys. And so I thought someone said it in the chat, but I thought it was a really good way of putting it. It was John Sarian Dabo has three priorities when he's in front of the mic: his players, followed by his players, and then his players. He's always talking to them, even if indirectly. That's why he comes across as a sunshine pumper. And I think that's a pretty good way of looking at it, and that you could kind of tell with just some of how he was discussing some of these players. So I thought it was a pretty it was a pretty honest evaluation of kind of where what he saw from last year, but mixed in with I want to bring more out of my guys, and so this is another way to do that. So that's kind of where I was, and it was a little bit different, but you saw some of the same elements from previous Dabo press conferences.
Yeah, I thought it was really an interesting way that he, as you mentioned, came into the press conference. Not quite how you typically hear him start an introductory press conference for, essentially what is a new team starting the 2024 season, with kind of just telling them, that, all the stuff that went wrong last season in detail and kind of laying it out there for everybody to know and, everybody to hear and just basically telling them like, hey, these coaches have been grinding. They haven't taken, this 2-month vacation. They've been in the film room grinding, setting up plans for this team, and that's an exciting thing from a Clemson standpoint, from a Clemson fan standpoint, I should say. He did kind of call Cade out a little bit in the fact that he mentioned the things that we all know Cade needs to get better at. We talked about it at length on this channel, and I'm not hating on Cade at all. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he has the potential to be a really good quarterback for Clemson and to lead them to a lot of wins. I think he's still got a bright future ahead of him, but his pocket presence obviously needs to improve. His decision making obviously needs to improve. So it was good to hear him kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of own those things out in front of the media and just, not that he needed to or anything like that, but it's refreshing to hear that that's what the Clemson coaching staff has been working on since we last heard from them. Not that he owed that to us at all, but it was refreshing to hear as a Clemson fan that, we truly are trying to correct all those things. They know what's going on, and they've made a plan to fix it. So I think that's all good stuff. And, I can't wait to see how the spring progresses, how his tone changes, the spring progresses, what guys flash, what problems or what key elements are identified in spring, whether they be good or bad. I think there's going to be a lot that may be able to be gleaned from this spring just based off of, kind of the way that he rolled into the first spring practice press conference, I guess, for the 2024 season. So guess there'll be a lot more to come there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited to hear. I mean, it's we talked about kind of setting our expectations for how this spring, how we think this spring is going to go, and kind of what what our attitude going in is, and how we're going to process the information coming out. So that's always, it's easy to say that in the beginning, and then when you get into the swing of things and you hear, oh, this player is flashing and this player is flashing, and oh my God, this guy. And then you're like, oh, and you kind of get sucked in. We're going to try to not do that, but
yeah,
it's always tough. And, but and especially when you're a program that, and a fan base that, wants, you're kind of hungry for better days, so to speak, and not that these days are terrible. Clemson has certainly been worse. Yeah. And I've been alive for worse times in Clemson football history, but once you get a taste of that success, and especially it's not even just a taste. You had about, I mean, the playoff run was 6 years. I mean, it's a lot of time in college football, and it's a lot of time being in. It was a climb up to that point, and all of that success was like. It was something you never expected to have. And so now you're kind of starving to get back to that point. And so it's always like, oh man, maybe this is it. we're finally getting back to that point, and it's easy to
Yeah.
kind of, latch onto any positive grain that comes out of spring practice and say, oh, we're back. And so that's kind of the tough part about, these spring practices, because if you're not there, you can only go off of what, people are saying and what the coaches, say and what players say. And that's always difficult.
Yeah. And we felt like we've been duped in the past. But at the same time, as you mentioned, it's really hard not to get sucked in, right? Because we are diehard Clemson fans, and we want the program to get back to the place that it was, right? I mean, we spent the better part of a decade towards the top of college football, at the top or towards the top of college football for the better part of a decade. So it's tough to see the slide that has been the past 3 seasons. Albeit a lot of college football would love to be where Clemson's at currently right now. But, we know what this Clemson program is capable of. And as fans, we're looking forward to getting back to what Clemson is capable of being. And that's a program that has a chance to win a championship year in and year out. Not that we're going to win a championship every single year, not that we're even going to be there every single year, but one of those programs that always has a shot, right, on any given year to have a real shot to challenge for the crown, right? So, and that's what we're looking for. So,